We've talked about quiet quitting. Now there's a new trend, quiet cutting. Companies are finding alternative ways to cut costs, and that means reassigning employees instead of getting rid of their jobs. Adidas, Adobe, IBM, and Salesforce are just some of the companies that went through this process. Joining us now, Joanne Lipman, Yale University lecturer and the author of Next, The Power of Reinvention in Life and Work, a great book. I recommend it. And a CNBC contributor. Joanne, great to see you. So it seems like everything now, you just put the word quiet in front of it. You got quiet luxury, quiet quitting, quiet cutting. What makes quiet cutting different from just cutting or trimming staff?
Yeah. So first of all, great to see you this morning. I wish I were with you in person. So what we're seeing with this quiet cutting is, for time immemorial, we've had bosses who are trying to kind of squeeze people out. I think what's really interesting about quiet cutting is whether that is going to mask what we would normally see where companies are rolling out information about layoffs. And, typically it's a great indicator for us to know where the economy is going. And quiet cutting, I think, is interesting. What my concern is about quiet cutting, honestly, is what are the populations that it's going to hit? Who are the people who are going to be hurt most disproportionately? Because a lot of what we're seeing with this quiet cutting is you're reassigned, or in some cases you're remote and you're told now you have to come in. And we know that, for the past few years, the employees have been in the driver's seat. The employees have been able to really call the shots. But what that's done with remote work, hybrid work, we've seen that it's been really good for certain populations, particularly parents of young children, women, people of color. And will those groups be disproportionately hit by quiet cutting, which is trying to make their jobs less appealing to them?
Yeah, and I also wonder, during the pandemic, companies were just hoarding workers. It was just so hard to get labor. And I wonder to what extent quiet cutting is the result of companies just not wanting to get rid of people for fear that it's going to be too hard to rehire them. And how long will it take those scars from the pandemic of a severe labor shortage to really heal where they do feel comfortable getting rid of costs that they don't need?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I do think, we're now in this third year of every August, we hear companies saying, we're going to go back to the office. It's going to go back to normal in September, right after Labor Day. We're all going to come back again, and it's all going to go back to the way it was. And we see companies that have been trying to do that. There's been huge pushback. I mean, look at, Goldman Sachs, which just did away with summer Fridays and said you have to be here 5 days a week. Amazon, when it said people have to come back, the employees started to quit. Some employees were quitting. So I think this quiet cutting is a way to say, okay, we don't want to get into this situation again where it's so tight and we can't get employees. But on the other hand, we're in this sort of transitional period right now, right, where employees had the upper hand. Employees could call the shots. We had more hybrid, more remote. And now employers are trying to kind of grab back some of that power and to hold on to those employees. I would agree with you. There is some concern that, if the labor market remains really tight, that they're not going to be able to hire or rehire the people they need.
And, when it comes to remote work, you and I and Becky all started at the Wall Street Journal, where there was a real advantage of being in that newsroom, learning how the great reporters, the great editors sourced and broke news and had those conversations. Isn't it, though, job specific? And, this whole blanket idea of getting everyone back to the office or keeping it remote. Do you think eventually this will sort of lead to just industry by industry rules, what's appropriate, and also employee by employee appropriateness? Is that how it's all going to end up?
I agree. So it's not just industry by industry, it's company by company, department by department that we're going to see. And this is what we're finding. First of all, this 5 days a week that we're all going to go back to normal, that's over. Like, let's just put a pin in it and say it's done, right? These past 3 years of saying, it's all going to go back in September, that is over. But what we're seeing is some really interesting, different kinds of ways of working have now emerged. So you probably saw Smuckers. You guys are probably talking about Smuckers, which now says you can work anywhere in the world. You can be anywhere you want, but you have to be in the office for 22 separate weeks, as long as you pay your way, get to the office. So the rest of the time you can be remote from anywhere, which is a really interesting way. The employees actually like that. Allstate Insurance sold their headquarters. They have 82% of their workers, I believe right now, are remote workers. That's been working for them. 4-day work weeks. A whole bunch of companies have tried 4-day work weeks. And by the way, the studies show that 4-day work weeks, there's been studies in Iceland, in the UK, there's been a global study. They all found the same thing, which is that productivity is the same or higher. Employees are happier. There's less stress, and mental health improves among employees. So there's a whole variety of different variations. And I think we're moving into a new era where companies and particular positions will be structured in a way that potentially makes a lot more sense.
Hey, Joanne, to me, it just does feel, though, like this was a workers' employment market. And as it gets more to the employer's job market, you're going to do whatever the boss is doing. If the boss is in 5 days a week, you better be in 5 days a week. If you've got a boss who wants to sell the headquarters and say, I'm working from home and you can, too, that's a different story. But it just feels to me like the pendulum is swinging. We may not go back to exactly where we were 2019, but if the boss is in 5 days a week and if layoffs are coming, you better be there, too.
Yeah, I think this is a great point. And I've been saying this all along. I've been doing a lot of speaking and writing and researching on this topic. And frankly, what we've seen, because employees have had the upper hand, we've been able to kind of really move what the workplace looks like. But if there's a recession, if we have a real downturn, all bets are off, right? Because then everybody, you need a job, you're going to do whatever your boss tells you to do.